My angels. No. I just snorted straight away, right in the first few seconds. Good. Okay, hi. How's it going? It's Tuesday. I hope you enjoyed yesterday's post and the reflection on Neptune leaving Pisces, whatever that means. We'll get back around to that later on. Today we are jumping into the conversation about sicut deus, which, what does that mean? That is Latin for being like God or as God. It's sometimes translated. I'm Autumn, your host, and the founder of Reminding Eve, which is this place and this space. And I'm going to move my camera slightly. I'm already, can you tell? I'm on it right now, and I'll tell you why. I've already tried to record this episode, and what I discovered, again, you guys know I'm like a trial and error girl. It was even just breaking it down from, I'm teaching the overarching theme in Rebloom. We are all in a series right now that is covering 3 major questions. Who is God? Who am I? And what's the cause? Just a few little ones. We are not going into every aspect of these questions. We're looking at the major theological, philosophical, and metaphysical paradigms that create the foundational belief systems of these 3 questions for us all as human beings, based on the Genesis account. Now, if you are wondering, how can you be so authoritative about the Genesis account? I will say to you, you'll have to go back and watch the previous episodes to get all of the presuppositions, whatever, for why in this episode we've already concluded a few things that are the most logical conclusions we could draw. Okay, so we are going to start following our last episode on Imago Dei. I hope you listened to it. If you haven't, I would go back and watch it, because it's probably advantageous to start with what does it mean to be made in the image of God? Because this one is the second part of that. So this episode was going to just be on the fall, like what happened when Adam and Eve, fell to temptation, and what does temptation mean, and the knowledge of good and evil versus the 2 trees and all of this stuff. That's kind of where we're at now. Doing it in a reverse order, in other words. Before we get to the temptation bit, we're going to do what the trees mean. Okay. Thanks be. I'm going to invite the Spirit into this today. I'm going to invite my just all of our ancestors who are cheering us on and watching us develop our theology, our belief systems, who are watching from the other side. I just strangely feel like inviting them all into this session. Anyways, I'm going to read to you from Genesis 2 today, good and evil and good. All right. And Yahweh, this is 8:17, Genesis 2, 8:17. And Yahweh God planted a garden in Eden towards the east and put in it the human being that God had made. And Yahweh God made grow out of the earth all kinds of trees that were delightful to see and good to eat, and the tree of life in the center of the garden, and the tree of knowledge of good and evil. And a river flowed out of Eden to water the garden, and from there divided into 4 main rivers. The first is Pishon. It flows around the whole land of Havilah, and there one finds gold, and the gold of the land is precious. And one finds bdellium, resin, and shoham stone there. The second river is Gihon. It flows around the whole land of the Moors. The third is Hiddekel. It flows this side of Assyria. The fourth is the Euphrates. And Yahweh God took the human being and put the human being in the Garden of Eden to till it and to keep it. And Yahweh God commanded the human being, saying, You shall eat from every kind of tree in the garden, but from the tree of the knowledge of good and evil you shall not eat, for on the day you eat from it you shall die. So quickly, where are the 2 trees located in this massive theological story, right? In the center, okay? How many of the trees in the garden has God said they could eat from? Every. The word is every. What is the only prohibition that we see in the story? It is the commandment to not eat of the knowledge of good and evil. And what is the consequence of eating from it? Death. Okay? Now, in the last episode, I think I mentioned that we know, fast forward because we're reading the story now, that Adam and Eve never die. So obviously, life and death, according to God, means something else. We don't know what it means, what life means to God. We just think life means I'm breathing, here I am, I'm existing, therefore I am alive. But is that what life really is? So, as I mentioned, these episodes that we're doing, we couldn't possibly talk about all aspects of, who is God, who am I? It's endless. But in terms of who am I, how was I made, we are going back to the authoritative first mention. And we're just dealing with the huge paradigms, okay, that we are completely maybe overlooking. Okay, if you, such as, what does being alive really mean? Is being alive the same thing as life, having life? Okay, is being dead the same thing as death? And before you think, oh my God, don't hurt my head, I want you to hear what just happened. God just said to Adam and Eve, there's two options. There's a tree of life, and then there is a tree that if you eat from it, it will threaten that life. It equals death. But we know, because Adam is us, right? Humanity, Adam, from Adamah. We are, in fact, living, and we are not, and Adam doesn't die. So really, does that make sense? To God, which is where we are digging into, to God, what does it mean to live? And to God, what does it mean to die? Okay, so I'm going to do quite a lot of reading straight from the book because these are big bites. Okay, hang in there. Grab a snack. All right, so we're going to start with the tree of life. What in this story is important about the tree of life? It follows from the context that humankind was not expressly forbidden to eat from this tree. Okay? Indeed, this tree first gains its particular significance only after humankind has fallen prey to death by eating from the tree of knowledge. Before that, life is not something problematic or to be sought after or snatched at. Instead, it is just there as a given life, indeed life before God. In other words, Adam didn't know what death meant. He had no definition. How would you know what death meant if you were just alive and death had never existed? Does that make sense? For that reason, the tree of life is in this passage. It's mentioned with such little ceremony. It was just at the center, okay? Life was at the center. That's all that's said about it. Life that comes from the Creator, God, is at the center. That is to say that God who gives life is at the center. Adam's life comes from the center. Now, I'm going to be a broken record, but you guys know when we are reading ancient texts, the author is telling us a story, mythology, all of this hyperbolic ancient Hebrew, it is all pointing to bigger truths, okay? It's symbolic. So the tree of life, which is at the center, is placed at the center because that is symbolically saying that God, the giver of life, is at the center of Adam's life, okay? Constantly, there's no prohibition put on it. So Adam never has to grasp at life. He doesn't wonder what life is. He doesn't know what death is. He just lives limitlessly as life is just a part of his existence, okay? So there's no need to forbid any like you can have this much of it, but not this much. Because to Adam, he wouldn't understand what a prohibition was anyways. To Adam just has life, okay? But he has life in a particular way. I'm paraphrasing as I'm reading Bonhoeffer, so this is like being a translator. So Adam possesses life. He is not possessed by life. Adam possesses life. He is not possessed by life. Life isn't lording over him. There's no rules about how much he can have. He just is. Adam just is. Adam is united within by his obedience, which is effortless and natural, his innocence, and his ignorance of disobedience. He doesn't know anything other than just being, okay? His life comes from God and is lived before God, okay? And there is that clear boundary again that we've talked about before. Adam is not the center of life. It's very clear. Adam is not the tree of life. Adam is a creature in the garden. Okay, so humanity possesses in their obedience, in their innocence and in their ignorance, their true freedom, okay? All right, the only threat to this life is the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. Just like the tree of life, it also stands at the center of the garden. But as soon as this tree is pointed out, a special word from God is immediately attached. It is a prohibition against eating from it, and that is the threat of death. Okay? That is the first limitation that Adam is given. How is Adam to grasp what death is? I've said this to you. He's in unbroken obedience. These are empty words to Adam. Death means nothing to Adam. He couldn't know what death is, just like he doesn't really know what life is. Life is just God and living in this place, existing. Okay? This is, so when God points out that the first prohibition, do not eat from this tree, it is a threat to your life. This is the first limit that is put on the creature. The creature has a limit. Adam's own human existence is his creatureliness. The prohibition addresses Adam concerning Adam's freedom and creatureliness, and it binds Adam to this reality. Remember, we said that Adam exists in a certain way, okay? So the prohibition to Adam is, Adam, it's like God saying, Adam, you are who you are because of me, your creator. So now be what you are. You are a free creature. So now be that. You are free, so be free. You are a creature, so be a creature. Okay, remember when we talked about how ChatGPT, our superhuman AI intelligence, right? Far more intelligent than you and I, with far better deducing and reasoning skills. When Grok was tested in this way of asking about the existential reality of God and humanity, its answer was, remember, I am not the creator. The way that we define best, most intelligently define the creator, right, is by defining a boundary. What I can know, the most intelligent answer I can give you about who God is that I am not him. Whatever the other is, I am not. Because we're met with boundaries, limitations of knowledge. That's important. All right, so the opposite of that, and I want you to hear again, this is so powerful, okay? If you don't get any further in the video than this, hear what God, his will for you is. Who am I? This is what he says. You are who you are because of me. Your creator. Oh, I'm getting chills. So now be what you are. You are a free creature. So now be that. Okay? You are free, so be free. You are a creature, so be a creature. Be who you are. Okay, that is his will. Okay, it doesn't feel that easy, does it? No, because we're in the middle. We're post-fall. But that's the original design of you and me. First answer to who are you? Who am I? I am who I am because of my creator. I am an effect of the cause. I am a free creature, and I am commanded to be that, just that. No more, no less. I am a creature, so I am going to be a creature. I am free, so I am going to be free. Okay, so being human, the paradigm, the biggest paradigm of being a human is that. So in regards to human existence, this is how Adam is addressed by God in the garden. Does it sound simple? Yep. All right. He's also telling Adam that his human existence includes a limit. And that limit is that, this is so cool. Where is the prohibition put? I still remember the night I read this for the first time, and I was like, the light bulb that went on was insane. Okay. The prohibition is not around the edges, right? You know, when you think, oh, go here and no further, or run that way, or, you know, I'm going to go this far, but no further, right? We often think of a limit as being something that is out there, right? My don't go too far is out there. But what is actually true, okay, is that the only boundary, the only limit is put in the center of the garden, all right? It is to say that the limit on human existence has nothing to do with what's out there. God never says, don't go explore that, don't go do that. Nope, that's too far. It's never mentioned. In fact, Adam is commanded to multiply what's out there. The opposite, his Edenic mandate is to, whatever you see out there, make it more. Go, baby, go, right? The tree of life represents Adam's reality, is that God is at the center, okay? And Adam is not at the center. So the limit is not out there. The limit is put at the center of Adam's reality and the center of his existence, okay? The boundary is at the center as a limit of human reality. Human existence is possible in every way. Limit. Knowledge has a limit. To God, life meant something, but what did it mean? It meant Adam living with God at the center of his life. Okay? And God is life, and life need not be prohibited. Knowledge up to this point that Adam doesn't know good and evil. So what Bonhoeffer is going to be talking about is that Adam's knowledge is embedded in Adam's freedom for God, in unbroken obedience to God. It is knowledge, get ready for it, in ignorance of good and evil. Ignorance of good and evil, literally in Genesis, as the original design for you and me, is ignorance of good and evil. Please drop the mic right there. I'm going to say that again. For God, in God's own definition, as we see in Genesis, knowledge that includes eternal life, like really joyful life lived in abundance, includes that knowledge is ignorance of good and evil, of the understanding of good and evil. I didn't write it. I did not write it. If that offends you, then you are listening to the right broadcast. It should be offensive to you because you are in a default state of sic et deus. And you'll understand what that means as we go. If it offends you or feels strange to hear it, know that this is actually your mother tongue, This is actually your inheritance. This is your inheritance speaking to you, but it feels very, very strange. Possibly, if it does, it did to me, and I love this, so it must feel strange to hear that. And it shows you how proud we feel and how protective, defensive we feel of the knowledge of good and evil. All right, okay. Bonhoeffer is going to talk about the fact that this boundary is a boundary of grace. Life is only possible because of the limit, the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. Us understanding good and evil, as we soon do, is a threat to that life. Life is only possible because of this limit. I want to quickly give you the boundary, like an illustration of that, because we do need it to put in our terms. If you're in a relationship, okay, and you say you start a new relationship with somebody, and you're like, our trust, right, off the bat, we have a certain level of trust. Now, the only way we can understand this in our terms is that we're going to go like, you just go and do you, and I'm going to trust you because I love you and I've got no reason not to trust you yet, right? So, in other words, the life of our relationship will truly be innocent as long as the limitation of you not, let's say, cheating on me is never met, okay? The life of our relationship, the innocence of our relationship, the reality of the truth that you and I have this beautiful, relational trust. It is only possible if you abide by the limit that you can't cheat on me. You can't betray me. As soon as you do, that life is broken, right? Does that make sense? That life and that limit is a grace that God is giving to Adam. He's saying, don't do this, don't do this. The life that you experience now is reality, which is, by the way, it has no limitation, right? They are immortal at this point. There's no death that Adam understands, and Adam doesn't understand good and evil. And it does not detract or take away from anything he's experiencing. It's the highest level of whatever reality that would have felt like to be in paradise, in Eden. It's taking nothing away from him. It's not affecting his ability to enjoy Eve or relationships or to eat or to work. He's working, he's eating, he's doing, he's going. It's all happening. And knowing good and evil, it doesn't add anything to that experience. Okay? It's only going to threaten it. Why? That's where we're going next. Okay. Ooh, I can hear myself. I'm being very punchy. All right. The prohibition in paradise is the grace of the Creator towards the creature. God tempts no one. So he didn't put it there as a temptation. He put it there as a very serious limit. Only the Creator knows what the tree of the knowledge of good and evil is up to this point. Adam does not yet know it. As one who lives in the unity of obedience, Adam does not comprehend that which is two-sided. Adam does not comprehend paradox, okay? Adam cannot conceive of the breaking apart of that knowledge into good and evil. Adam knows neither what is good nor what is evil, and lives in the strictest sense beyond good and evil. Adam lives beyond good and evil. I want to stop again and make the point. Who am I? I was created to live beyond good and evil. There is a reality beyond good and evil. That is who I was created to be and to live in. I'm going to say this to you. You were created to live in a reality that includes both you enjoying life and living beyond the knowledge of good and evil. And that life comes from God. All right. So we're going to talk about pleasure and pain next. All right. Tov and Ra are the Hebrew words for good and evil. All right, we're going to get into that now. Okay. The moral split, we'll call it. He's going to use it in these terms. All right. So we're going to look at pleasure and pain. Okay. Tov and Ra are concepts that express what is in every respect the deepest divide of human life. The essential point about them is that they appear as a pair. Okay, I want you to get your yin-yang symbol in your mind. It's one of the easiest ones to hold in your mind. They are always appearing as a pair, good and evil, pleasure and pain, opposites, paradox, because the essential point about them is that they exist as a pair. They're never, ever meant to be split apart. Okay? They belong inseparably together. There's no Tob. There's nothing that's pleasurable, good, or beautiful without its being always already immersed in Ra, in that which is painful, evil, base, false. I know this is blowing your mind. And what is painful and evil in its widest sense does not occur without a glimmer of desire for pleasure, which is what makes pain so completely pain. That which is good in the sense of Tob is for us always only something that has been torn from evil, that has passed through evil, that has been conceived, carried, and born by evil. The luster of the pleasurable or good is its origin in evil and its overcoming in evil, to be sure. But in the same way that a child overcomes the mother's womb, that is, in such a way that the good is enhanced by the greatness of the evil from which it has torn itself. To us, Ignatius is greater. He's going to talk about the church fathers. I'm not going to go into that. That sounds so heretical, bizarre, weird, I know. But if you understand what he's saying, actually, let me just keep going. In the same way, however, evil is enhanced by the good from which it comes. Pain is enhanced by the pleasure out of whose depths alone it has become possible. No real evil wholly lacks the luster of good. Okay, again, this is sounding offensive to our minds. Why? Because we have decided in our state of sicut deus, which we haven't gotten there yet. I'm giving you all of this as a setup. We have already decided that evil is just evil. What are you talking about? Good comes out of evil. Oh, what are you talking about? Evil and good are meant to go together. Exactly the point. It does not make sense to us because we are not the creator, and we were never meant to handle the knowledge of good and evil. They were never meant to be split apart, because as soon as you split them apart, it's fucking tormenting to the brain. Pardon my French, but truth, right? Tormenting to think of how evil and good actually coexist. But go back to the moment of singularity. First episode we did, the uncreated creator, the Big Bang and Genesis. What is the entire cosmos formed out of, my angels? Antimatter and matter. I'm getting chills. Do you remember what I was telling you about antimatter or evil, okay, is the opposing force out of which matter overcomes, and all of us are formed. Every tree you see, every human being, everything comes out of that moment. If the antimatter did not exist, matter would not be formed. Matter equals good, okay? Matter is the goodness of God, and we know that matter overcame antimatter. Please, I hope you're making the connection. To us, because we have fallen, because of this great temptation, because we are in the middle, because we have complete amnesia and we have forgotten, all that we know is handling the knowledge of good and evil. It pervades every moment of our waking existence. It is the new epistemological state of humanity. I know that's a big word. The way our knowledge works now, post-fall, is that we manage paradox all the time, and we're torn apart by it. And that was the very threat to our original existence, our original design. It's all right there in Genesis 1 and 2 and 3. You've got to go read it. God is clearly saying that after you eat from this, don't eat it because it will split you apart. Only I, God, who created the Big Bang, right? Only I can handle paradox. Not as in it's not going to exist for you. It exists for you, but you just don't understand the intricacies of it, okay? You aren't burdened by the responsibility of bearing the knowledge of paradox to the level of understanding it with complete justice and peace. Only the absolute divine creator can reconcile with perfect understanding to the point where he can exist in peace. You know what I'm talking about, that God, he can live in peace, exist in peace, totally managing the weight of paradox. We are when you put that onto a human being, right, who is a creature designed to rest and enjoy his life and let God be God, you put that on that creature and it will kill them. And it kills them by the definition that God gives. Something about us was that all we had to do was just be. That was enough. You don't have to do anything for me. You don't have to be more or less. We'll get to all of this. You get to enjoy your existence without this. But this will break you, okay? And it has nothing to do with God punishing them. All right. So, but we must go on and inquire further in order to understand the importance of what the Bible says about the tree of knowledge. As soon as you eat from it, you must die. The tree of knowledge is the tree of death, okay? So, knowledge of good and evil equals death. Life equals existence and reality with God at the center, managing the knowledge of good and evil. Whoever grasps at life must die. Oh my goodness. Those who want to save their life will lose it. Do you remember those words of Christ? Those who lose their life find it. Those who grasp at life lose their life. That is Christ, the self-witness of the who was present at creation, the Logos, telling you again about the tree of knowledge of good and evil. He's telling you, if you are trying to grasp at knowledge, you will lose your life. Those who lose it, in other words, those who trust and let go and let God manage what only God can manage, will find life, because life is not meant to be grasped at, striven for. It's meant to be effortless. Okay, I'm going to move on. These are really big concepts. Hang in there. All right. Okay, so we're going to talk about pleasure and pain. What's painful in pleasure and what's pleasurable about pain? It is that in all pleasure, a person desires eternity, but knows that pleasure is transient and will end. So, in other words, what pleasure is there in pain? It is that in the depths of pain, a person feels pleasure in the fact that they know it's going to have to come to an end. In other words, we at one point did not know that our pleasure was going to end. Okay? The pleasure is in death. So endings and beginnings. If you are in eternity, it's not scary, right? Think about the cycles of life, the tree, right? The tree's leaves fall and they fall to the ground and they die and they become, right, nourished in the soil. And the ecology and the economy of Eden is that endings are just as good as beginnings, and beginnings are okay, and endings and beginnings, they're all just part of the cycle. They're not something scary to face. But if you split these two concepts apart and suddenly you know what death is, so now You want to know how you now are aware of death. The pleasure in death is that something that is painful can end. Okay? What is the evil in good? It's that good dies. What is the good in evil? It's that evil dies. Let me say that again. What is the evil thing about good? It's that good can die. Good can end. Right? You're having a great time, but you know it's going to end. What is the good in evil? The good thing about evil is that evil dies. Okay? That's what real paradox is. That's the truth of paradox. Okay. So what Bonhoeffer is explaining to us here is that we're taking God's definition of life and death in order to tell you who you are. This is very important to you to understand about you, okay? Life was meant to not be something that you were responsible for all the weight of paradox, of understanding it, of negotiating it and navigating it. You weren't meant to see the yin and the yang split apart and knowing the differences, right? That equaled death for God. In further to that, for God, death was that Adam would be aware of the knowledge of good and evil. He would be aware of this and divided inside and tormented by the weight of understanding all of that, right? That would take away from his reality. So for God, that is death. To God is that he would be aware of that, but living eternally, right? Living before God in Eden, eternally like that is the worst thing that could ever happen to us, okay? Does that make sense? Which is why Adam does not die a physical death, right? This is not an unredeemable sin that happens. What happens later on, and the consequences of that are that God mercifully exiles Adam from the garden. Remember, the garden represents heaven on earth. It represents eternity, immortality, right? For Adam to have lived in that state would have been eternal torment for him and her. So God exiles them and puts a limit on the torture and the torment of having to burden themselves and bear that responsibility. And also we know that plan A is plan A. Go watch previous episodes. Plan A is still the garden and Eden, okay? And it sounds horrible, and it is. For God, this is death for us. For a merciful, loving, wonderful creator, you should not have to constantly be bearing the weight of good and evil. It doesn't do anything for you. Okay, pleasure and pain exist together, and to tear them apart and know about it makes life really horrible, and it's scary for us. Very, very scary. Okay. All right. For those of you still watching, for the one person who's probably still watching this, I don't know. Okay. Life was not meant to be forced. It was meant to be easy. Okay, so Adam managing knowledge. So Adam was previously not managing knowledge. Does that make sense now? When I think I told you in the last episode that the only picture that's really worthy of explaining this is if you imagine like a filter of knowledge, right? God, the unseen God, knowledge, it's given as a filter into Adam. So his knowledge is managed by God. Post-fall, Adam is going to be managing knowledge within himself. He is now his own resourcer. He is now responsible for understanding good and evil and managing it, right? That's the entire conversation around ethics. And we are very, very protective and prideful and defensive, and our entire existence exists around our management of good and evil, of our ethics, of our morality, right? We are in a state of sicut deus now. Okay? And you can see, I'm not really going in order, but you can see now that why the trees were at the center of the garden and why knowledge is managed from the center of human existence is because the person who is managing that knowledge, either God or self, is what a person lives their reality out of. Okay? Reality is, if God is at the center managing that knowledge, that is your reality. That will be your reality. If you are at the center and you're managing that knowledge, then you are effectively God. You are sicut deus. You are like God. Okay? I'm giving away the next episode, but there you go. I'm kind of jumping ahead. So now Adam is living out of what's called an inner split or inner dividedness. Okay? Knowing Tob and Ra. So humankind begins to live in a circle. It lives out of its own resourcing of knowledge, right? And it is alone. Yet it cannot live because, in fact, that's not the real definition of life. It must accomplish the managing of this knowledge now. It's in its own resources, alive, but it is actually dead now. According to God, it's dead. Because it must live. So in other words, Adam doesn't die. We're not dead. We're living. We are living, but we now must accomplish life out of our own resources. And just that is its death, or our death. Just that kind of existence for God and for us is actually dead. So that concept of zombies, like walking around as dead people, is, for God, it's the fact that you're having to manage all that, the fact that that's your reality, that makes you dead. Okay? Life is you not managing that without that weight. True life, right? Which if you're a parent and you think of your kid, when your kid is just weighed down by whatever, it's like, you don't want your children to be burdened with responsibilities that are not appropriate for them, right? So we protect them. That's what God does for us. That's what he wants for us. It's that same kind of principle. We're almost done. I can't believe it. Okay. I've been so fierce. I can hear myself. Oh, I love it. Okay. The world that has been torn apart into Tob and Ra is known only in death, and Adam knows nothing of this world. To Adam, it remains hidden in the tempting fruit of the tree of knowledge. What Adam knows is that the secret of humankind's limit, of the life of the human being, is in God's keeping. Okay, what's important to understand is that this story claims us not as listeners with the gift of imagination, but as human beings who, no matter how much they stretch their imaginations and all other mental and spiritual powers, are simply unable to transport themselves to this paradise beyond good and evil, beyond pleasure and pain. Instead, with all their powers of thinking, they remain tied to this torn apart world, to antithesis, to contradiction. This is so because our thinking, too, is only the expression of our being, of our existence, which is grounded in contradiction. Because we do not exist in a state of unity, our thinking is torn apart as well. I don't know does that make sense? I don't know that I need to rephrase that. No matter how hard we try, we cannot transport ourselves back on our own, in our own state of going back to that living beyond good and evil. That feels like a fairy tale. It feels like something it feels like another reality, because it is. And that's why Christ comes. He doesn't come to make you good. He doesn't come so that you'll behave. He doesn't come so you'll be perfect. All, what's the word, sanitized and floating around in a white gown. No. Oh my God. He also doesn't come to just deal with evil. He doesn't come to deal with good or evil in humanity. He comes to reconcile the paradox. Okay. I'm getting way ahead of myself. Okay. So we are confronted by this. I think that's a really good way to put it. This information is very confronting. We only know existence in terms of contradiction. Our existence exists as knowing all contradiction, right? Okay, so we're confronted by this reality. Adam disturbs us and criticizes us in a way. And where Adam's history ends is where ours begins. So that line of demarcation that we're talking about, and we're done, is what ended with Adam, right? Is where is what starts with us. And that's the big shift that we're discussing. Going from imago Dei, made in his image, which by definition is living in relationship, alive, really alive, beyond good and evil. That ends when the relational trust is broken, when the limit is broken, and Adam decides, you know what? I will have that knowledge of good and evil. Thank you very much. Adam, you don't know what you're asking for. Oh, well, okay, and we'll get into that in the next episode. We're going to look at how is it possible that the serpent, right, can come in with such a specific question and tempt both of these two living in perfection, right, in what we called perfection. How can that serpent have asked such a question? Did God really say not to eat it, right? That's where we're going tomorrow. I'm excited. Are you excited? I hope all of this makes sense. I hope it just kind of went for your brain, because it is in that place that we are, it's really evidence that we are in the fall, because everything is going on in here. All the fall is about what happened in here. Remember, I said to you guys, the doctrine of original sin is not taught in the correct way. It is taught as though it was a moral failing, right? As though it were about, well, we were good and then we became bad. We were never good. We were always good and bad. We just didn't know it. The world was always good and bad. We just didn't know it, right? We didn't deal with the knowledge of good and evil. The knowledge of good and evil is the very thing that torments our life and existence. It is a responsibility that is only capable of being handled by the divine, absolute, uncreated creator, who is perfectly just and capable of managing that knowledge. Okay? So that's where we're ending today. And I love you, my angels. I'll see you tomorrow.